Hey, digital world, welcome back once again to another Spliced in Later. Well, we made it. I don't know if you are living in Australia or not, where you are in the world, but the last week has been pretty nuts. COVID has resurged back here in certain parts of the country, which meant that every day leading up to this movie that I'm about to review for you was an anxious wait, because if my home territory pretty much got a single case, I'm pretty sure we would have gone into a snap 3 or 4 day lockdown, which would have absolutely ruined my plans to go see this movie. But the fates smiled on me ever so kindly, and I was able to go see this film. Yes, you know what it is, probably, maybe you don't, depending how often you listen. But today, we are going to talk about the new Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, Black Widow, only 16 months late from when it was originally supposed to come out in April 2020. Now, this should be a good discussion. If you are a regular listener to this show, you know that I often delve into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is probably my favorite movie franchise of all time. It used to be Star Wars, but there's just something about the cinematic universe, as I've discussed in many of my previous episodes. All these different franchises, all these different characters that manage to have their own movies and come together for team-ups. It just works. My friend, as we were getting ready to watch this movie, the trailer for Phase 4 of Marvel played before the movie, and he said, and I absolutely agree with him, that Marvel has a better 4-point plan than most governments, and he's absolutely right. So for this one, talking about Black Widow, I'll be adding it to my MCU playlist if you are listening to that specifically. It won't be like the previous movies where I spoil a lot of stuff and I talk about what I did and didn't like and the evolution of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This will be more like the standard reviews you would normally get if I reviewed a new movie, such as when I reviewed F9 or Cruella in my recent episodes. So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be briefly summing up the movie. I'll say what I liked about it, what I disliked about it, my overall opinion of the movie, my recommendation, and we will move on. Maybe someday I'll come back and go more thoroughly into it when I eventually get to Black Widow in my ongoing series. But that seems like that's a million years away. So we won't worry about that for now. Instead, let's just get right into it and review Black Widow. Now, a bit of housekeeping, because it's very interesting. I have been recently showing all the MCU movies to my family because they have not seen every single movie. So we went through and we watched them all, starting from Iron Man all the way to Spider-Man Far From Home. At the time, we thought by the time we get to the end of it, Black Widow and all these other movies would be out, but alas, no such luck. But I noted, and it's a problem here for sure, but as we were going through, my mother just could not grasp or remember the character of Black Widow. She either confused her with Scarlet Witch, simple enough, Scarlett Johansson, Scarlet Witch, easy enough to do, or she just forgot about the character. She knew all about Iron Man and Thor and Captain America and Hulk, and to an extent even Hawkeye. But when it came to Black Widow, it's just something about her just did not stick. And I think that's something that's reflective for the character and her overall use in the MCU. She was first introduced way back in Iron Man 2. If you listen to my Iron Man 2 episode, I go in quite extensive detail about her. Her original role in that film was to be eye candy. She was introduced as the sexy super agent who is badass and kicks people, but also look how sexy she is. Isn't she pretty? She's undressing in the back of Happy's car. Maybe Happy will get a sneak peek at her. Oh, nope, she caught him. Oh, Happy. Oh, men, aren't we lovable scamps? No, we're trash. Since then, her role has been more involved in mainly Captain America and Avenger movies. She's always been a very reliable teammate and Avenger, a sidekick to Captain America or to Iron Man, depending on what side she's on. But that's all she's ever really been. She was always played second fiddle to the bigger ones. There's always been hints about her past, about this very, very upsetting childhood story about her being drafted into the Black Widow program in Russia, being part of the Red Room, which is where all these super spies are conditioned to be Black Widows. She's talked about how she's murdered so many people, some of them good, some not so good, so she wants to seek redemption for it, which is why she joined S.H.I.E.L.D. and then she joins the Avengers, leading to her ultimate fate in Avengers Endgame, which, without spoiling anything, she has a final end in Endgame. Whether it's good or bad is up to you. You have to go and see the movie. But people have clamored for a Black Widow movie for so long that some have even argued that now that we're finally getting it, is it even worth it? Her story has finished in the MCU, so much so that this movie is not a prequel, but a prequel-ish to where we are now. It takes place after Captain America Civil War, so back in 2016. Now, if you're counting the years, as I unfortunately have to keep track of how old I am, that is 5 years ago. Am I right? I think so. 5 years past. Why we didn't get this movie 5 years ago, I don't know. But at the same time, she deserves a movie. She is interesting enough. She has an intriguing enough backstory that a movie could flesh it out. So did this movie succeed? Not quite. Was it an entertaining movie? Absolutely. Did I enjoy it? Hells yeah. Not to the high extent of, say, a Captain America film or an Avengers film or Thor Ragnarok or Guardians of the Galaxy, but certainly not to the low lows of Iron Man 2 or Thor the Dark World. This movie is competent. This movie is entertaining. This movie is funny. This movie has a purpose and it deserves to be a part of the film franchise. As I said, if I go back and rewatch, I don't know why, but I may watch this out of order just because it flows better. It's very much taking you back to a time where our brains are not really used to. They kept talking about Captain America and the Sokovia Accords and everybody being on the run, and I had to train my brain to go, oh, that's right, this is 5 years ago. Okay, cool. Which is easy enough to do. I'm just an old man who has dementia. But basically what this movie is about, as I said, takes place after Captain America Civil War. So at the end of that, Black Widow was working with Iron Man with the Sokovia Accords, but then she broke it to help Captain America. As a result, she goes on the run. Going on the run means she goes into hiding, but while she's in hiding, she gets contacted by another Black Widow agent called Yelena Belova, played by Florence Pugh, who also so happens to be her sister, sorta. They had a family back when they were kids, but not the practical sense of the family. They weren't officially. It was a sleeper family. So she had a mum and a dad and a sister, but they weren't actually family. It was all an undercover assignment. They both went through the Red Room together, and then they both went off in very different directions. Anyway, Yelena has broken free from the Black Widow program, and she is now trying to bring it down because it's headed by this very nasty man called Dreykov. She believes that the Black Widows can be saved or at least stopped, and she doesn't really want Natasha to help her, but since Natasha is in town, she decides, yeah, all right, because she thought she took down the Red Room with Hawkeye many years ago. So she's like, oh, I didn't succeed? Okay, yeah, cool. Going on their adventure, they eventually rope back in the rest of their family, and I'm using quotations here because, as I said, it's not quite family, including their father, Alexei Shostakov, also known as the Red Guardian, the only Soviet Union super soldier, and their mother, Milena Vostokov, played by Rachel Weisz, who is a scientist of sorts. They all get back together, they all have their ups and downs, their hiccups and whatever, but they eventually focus on their goal of taking down Dreykov and taking down the Red Room, all while being hunted by this very lethal agent of Dreykov's called Taskmaster, who is this unknown assailant who has the ability to do whatever they see, mimic essentially. So she has all the moves of all the Avengers because she studied all their videos. Captain America, Black Panther, Black Widow, Winter Soldier, they're all there. So it's an unstoppable killing machine that's constantly after them to try and take them down. That's the plot in a nutshell. Again, this is a channel that tries not to spoil movies for you, so you'll have to go to the movies to see more of this plot and where they go and how they do and all of that stuff. So what did I like about this movie? Well, I thought it was very entertaining. It is a bit slow in the beginning. It takes a while to get off. It has a slow beginning, then a very interesting part, then a bit slow again, and then it starts to rise from there. It takes its time setting up the characters, setting up the plates. It has a very interesting. It starts off in a flashback. So if you want to see this movie for one reason only, which is to know where Natasha came from and how she ended up in the Red Room, you sort of get it. You get more of a flashback, which mainly sets up her family with Yelena and Alexei and Milena, and it's a very tragic origin story. It's still a bit slow because there's something strange about this film, which is the sound. For some reason, when everybody talks, it's very soft, and I was straining in the beginning because everyone seemed to be mumbling, and I could not figure out what people were saying. And I think that's just some sort of weird sound design choice, or maybe my cinema just wasn't playing it loud enough. I could be going deaf, I'm not sure. But after that, it has a very, very intriguing Very awesome opening titles, which shows a series of flashes of young Natasha's time in the Red Room and young Yelena and all of that as well. And it's very, very cool. I like... Marvel always has a habit of putting their credits at the end of the movies. Guardians and Iron Man, I think, are one of the few movies which have their credits at the start. But it worked really well, and they have a color of entertain us, which I don't know. I have a terrible taste in music. I'm pretty sure people will hate it, but I liked it. I think it fit very well with what I was seeing. After that, it slows right down because it has to put Black Widow in play for the story to happen, which means they have to get her out of the Civil War conflict and across to Morocco. I think she's hiding out in when the story starts, which is it's a bit of a drag. But once Florence Pugh shows up in her very first scene with Scarlett Johansson, it absolutely takes off. Which brings to my second point and what I really loved about this film, which is the new characters that they introduced, specifically Florence Pugh. Florence Pugh makes this movie as Yelena. She is interesting, she is entertaining, she is funny, she is badass, she's incredible. And I hope, I don't know, because the future of Marvel is a mystery to me, but if she's being set up to be more involved with the Avengers and everything else, I'm all for it, absolutely. She has a very dry sense of humor. She has a very observational sense of humor. She's constantly talking and chatting away, whether it's about the pockets on the vest that she's wearing or observing if they're going to die and whether it's cool or not, to getting disgruntled when she's told off when she wasn't even doing anything. It was giggling. My friend even leaned over to me during the movie and said, I like her. And that was good. That was one of the few times when he's talked to me in the movies and I didn't go, shh. I said, yeah, I agree with you. She has a very good rapport with Scarlett Johansson as well. The two of them work very well together, and you can really believe that they are sisters or adoptive sisters or anything like that. They're constantly either snipping at each other or bickering. They have this back and forth, which is very much heightened by Florence Pugh's ability to just take what Scarlett Johansson has said and just twist it and turn it into a joke that's also an insult back at her. But it's very believable, and you believe watching this movie, oh yeah, these guys were sisters. They grew up together. They love each other, but they also hate each other, which is great. David Harbour, as well, as a very close seven, as Alexei Shostakov, the Red Guardian, who is a very interesting character. Imagine Captain America if he had never got a chance to fight in World War II and instead just been sitting around waiting for his opportunity to be cool, but instead nothing happened and he got bloated and fat and insecure and forgotten in the past, which is basically the Red Guardian. He has the power, he is a super soldier, but he's never had his moment. For one thing, he's always wanted to fight Captain America, and as much as he tells people he has, he absolutely hasn't. But he's let himself go. He can hardly fit into his suit. He's desperately seeking glory. Glory is everything to him, so much so that his daughters believe that he resents them, which in most part you can tell for his performance he does. He doesn't want to be the family man. He wants to be the hero of the Soviet Union or whatever. But there's also that secret connection he's got there. He does love them, and you can tell it. He's just very, very bad at expressing it. And he also has a lot of funny moments in here. He's got some good he's the dumb character, essentially. He's slow to realize things. He's the last one on the plan. He doesn't realize when he's being made fun of. But David Harbour does it with this very cheeky way, which I really enjoyed. Rachel Weisz is also good, though she's not in it as much. Her character is a bit interesting because I wasn't quite sure what to make of her, if she was a good guy or a bad guy, or what side she was on with the Black Widows or anything like that. But she also has some good comedic moments, which I thought were good. Speaking of comedic moments, there are a couple in here, though, that fall absolutely flat for me, and you will know them when you watch them. One has something to do with what the Red Room does to women, which has always been a serious debate for Marvel MCU fans and all that even should be a thing. It's played for laughs in here, and I did not like that. And then there's another thing here involving pig torture, which I don't care if we eat pigs. I don't want to see a pig tortured on screen, and I don't want it to be done like we should be laughing because that pig is in pain. No, not cool. So there's just heads up and warnings. They're not spoilers. They're just if you think I don't think I should be laughing, should I be? No, you're not laughing because you shouldn't be. Don't worry about that. And overall, the story itself is pretty basic. We've seen it before. We've seen it 100 times in different movies, but it is absolutely carried by very lovable new characters in the repertoire between the Romanov family, which leads to a very entertaining last 30 minutes, which is just pure action and explosions and different fights and plans. And depending on if your eyes glaze over because you've seen this 1,000 times before, I didn't. I thought the music and everything that Black Widow was doing to take down Dreykov in the Red Room and all of that was very entertaining for me. And there were a couple bits where I was holding my breath because I was like, whoop, whoop, how's she going to get out of that? I guess I know she does because she shows up in later movies, but it still makes you go, whoop, whoop. Interesting. There are some downs for this film for me, unfortunately. Once again, the movie falls into its villain trap. There are a lot of MCU films where they do not flesh out the villain and he's just there for story points, and that's really frustrating. And Dreykov, played by Ray Winstone, might be one of the worst villains to come out of the MCU movies. Not because he's a bad character or he's badly portrayed. Ray Winstone does great whenever he's in it. I don't know why they hired him to play a Russian, because even when he's doing his Russian accent, you can hear his English drawl behind it, but whatever. The issue here is that he's hardly in the movie. He shows up in a handful of scenes before his big scene at the end of the movie, but otherwise the rest of the movie, all the characters tell you why he's bad, and I can't stand that. I hate when movies tell you that a character is bad and why you should hate him. All through the movie, every character, Black Widow, Yelena, Alexei, they all go, Dreykov did this, how terrible is that? Dreykov did that, how terrible is that? We need to find Dreykov. Dreykov will be hard to take down, but we've got to do it. And there was a point going, okay, can we see him? Can we talk to him? Even give us one scene where he's in his villainous palace and he's talking to his subordinates going, we need to find Natasha. Go out there and get her. I think he has like maybe 2 lines in the whole movie before he gets to his big monologue at the end. Frustrating. Don't tell people that a villain is bad. Show it to them. Show, don't tell. And this is a big tell. Taskmaster is just a little bit better. There's an intrigue to the character. There's a mystery, which I won't spoil. I believe you'll call the twist a mile away when you are watching it. But if you're a bit slow, like I am, I didn't catch it right away. But according to my friend, he knew immediately. So there you go. But we've also seen it before in terms of super soldier hunters that go after her. We've seen it before in Bucky Barnes the Winter Soldier. We've seen it in Killmonger from Black Panther, and it's been done better character-wise. So Taskmaster looks cool when they're doing their flips and fights and mimicking the Avengers, but otherwise it's a wasted opportunity in terms of more character growth or development there. But a little better than Dreykov because Taskmaster at least shows up a couple of times in the film. Kind of like Jason Statham showing up in Furious 7. He shows up sporadically in the movie, doesn't explain too much about him, but the things he does in the movie, you go, okay, that's a force to be reckoned with. And that is the case with Taskmaster. The one big flaw for this movie, unfortunately, is that even though we've clamored and waited for a Black Widow film for so long, maybe, some of us, unfortunately, she's the weakest part of the film, and I think that's because the new characters that are introduced are so much more entertaining and interesting than her, which has always been unfortunate for Black Widow. She's surrounded by other characters which are more intriguing. The movie's slow at the start because it's just Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow wandering around saying some things and doing some stuff. She never emotes too much emotion. She never lets us in. I know she's a super spy, but this is the movie. This is the chance to learn that. And even in the most emotional bits, Florence Pugh's Yelena is giving off more emotion, and you have more connection with her than you do with Scarlett Johansson. And for a movie that's supposed to be about her, this is the time, this is the moment for her to shine. The only reason it resonates a bit, I suppose, is because we've seen Avengers Endgame, and we know what eventually is the fate for her. So you do feel a bit melancholy watching her finding her family, trying to rebuild it, knowing that she wants to rebuild her Avengers family as well. Knowing where eventually she will end up is sad. But there are points in the movie, there are heroic moments where the things that were happening with her were not as interesting as what was happening with Yelena or the Red Guardian or even Rachel Weisz. So that is unfortunately a big flaw. It's not enough to turn the movie off entirely, but it has missed its ultimate goal, I think. That being said, oh, and one other, I even forgot because it's a forgettable character. There's another character in here called Rick Mason, played by Oti Fagbenli, who is Natasha's contact or contractor. He shows up sporadically through the movie to give her stuff, but it's never explained how they know each other or why or what their relationship is or why he should even bother. that's it. I've got no much more to say about that because it was very irrelevant to the plot. That could have been anyone, really. So I'm not sure if there's an ultimate goal with him for future movies, but he's very forgettable, unfortunately. That being said, those are nitpicks. They in no way have made me go, all right, well, I didn't enjoy that movie, or that movie has been taken down several pegs or anything. These are just observations I have had from going to lots of movies, and just my brain's on overload at the moment. I'm always constantly analyzing movies because I've seen things in so many that I can't help it, unfortunately. But that does not detract from a very competent and entertaining movie, something that is worthy of being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I highly recommend it. Shockingly, I'm sure you all thought this was going to be the Marvel movie where I say, no, I'm off them forever. If you're holding your breath for that, you will die, unfortunately. I give Black Widow an 8 out of 10. It is solid. It is entertaining. It introduces us to a wonderful plethora of new characters, especially Florence Pugh's Yelena, who I hope we see more of. It is nice to have a Black Widow movie. It is fitting that Scarlett Johansson gets to star in it, even if she is unfortunately overshadowed in certain places. The action's great. The story kicks off to a very high-octane adrenaline bit. It is a nice melancholy thing if you are familiar with Avengers Endgame, and the small stuff about a weak villain and all of that is stuff we've seen before in other MCU films as well, and that hasn't detracted from their enjoyment either. So overall, definitely go and see it. Depending where you are in the world, you can go see it in the movie theaters if you like, or you can download it off Disney Plus for that stupid premium access where you're basically paying an arm and a leg. I would advise seeing it in the cinemas if you can. I have seen it. This is my first movie where we had to wear a mask to go and see it, and I did not at once feel unsafe, for sure. But it's up to you. You have to do what you feel comfortable with, and those options are there available for you on Disney Plus if you would like to stay at home. But definitely check it out. In fact, I'm sure you will, because everybody sees these movies. There you are. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed my review. I will be back tomorrow for another one. I am going to be reviewing Space Jam: A New Legacy, and oh boy, I'm excited. I can't tell if I'm going to love it or hate it, but you'll just have to tune in to find out. Either way, thank you for listening as always. Go and see Black Widow. It's a good time. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.